This presentation is all about the two approaches which are most common, but they are contradictory with each other, adopted by plant pathologists to produce resistant plants against the pathogens. One is known as adult plant resistance and other is known as seedling resistance. In different crops, these strategies are adopted, but most common in wheat crop against the rust diseases. Adult plant resistance and seedling resistance both are under the control of gene. But the difference is that the genes which are responsible for adult plant resistance only express when the plants are adult or mature. For example, in case of wheat crop from tillering to the booting stage, while the genes which are responsible for the seedling resistance express themselves from the seedling stage until the plant mature or until its natural death take place. So obviously, as a layman or even as the scientist, we like to prefer seedling resistance because it is effective from the day one till the maturity of the crop. But both approaches has the pros and cons. That is why those approaches are simultaneously working in plant pathology. In the next slides, we would briefly like to discuss what are the advantages of adult plant resistance and the seedling resistance, and what are the disadvantages associated in both approaches. First, we would like to discuss about the adult plant resistance. As I mentioned earlier, that the adult plant resistance is under the control of genes. But this is not under the control of a single gene, rather than more than one gene play its role. So the effect is the minor one. That is why these genes are considered as the minor genes and they all contribute into the resistance. However, individually these genes are least effective. But this resistance is somehow correlated with the age of the plant as well as the prevailing environment. Age, as I told you earlier, in case of wheat, these genes which are responsible for the adult plant resistance only express themselves from tillering to the booting stage. While in case of environment, the temperature is the most crucial factor. At a certain temperature, these genes express themselves. If that temperature is not reached in the field, they will never express themselves despite the plant is at the tillering or the booting stage. So because this resistance is under the control of more than one gene, so it is very difficult for any pathogen to break all these genes at a one point. So adult plant resistance is not never completely broken down by any pathogen, one or two or three genes still contributing in the resistance. And the practically very important part is that because adult plant resistance protect the plant at the tillering to the booting stage. And remember, in case of the wheat, the maximum grain filling take place at these stages, especially at the flag leaf stage. So the maximum carbohydrates are formed at this stage. So it is always recommended that if you want to apply the fungicide, never try to apply the fungicide earlier, rather than apply at this stage where there is the grain filling taking place. So the most important agronomically stage of the crop is the flag leaf stage. So these genes protect the plant against the rust pathogen at this point. So if they protect the plant at this point, it means that if these genes are present in the crop, they will minimize the use of the fungicide. So that is why adult plant resistance is very important. However, there are certain disadvantages are also associated with the adult plant resistance. For example, because this resistance is not effective at the earlier stage of the plant growth, such as the seedling stage, and if the rust pathogens attack at the earlier stages of the plant growth, then the plant is not protected and it don't the adult plant resistance genes are not expressing at that point. So that is one of the disadvantage associated with the adult plant resistance. Similarly, because the contribution is the minor one, that is why it is very difficult to locate a plant where the adult plant resistance is expressing itself, unlike the seedling resistance. So practically, it is very difficult to identify the plant where the resistance is due to the contribution of adult plant resistance. Now, if we look at the seedling resistance, as I mentioned earlier, that this resistance is based on a single gene, and that gene is known as the major gene. And the advantage associated with this kind of resistance is that this resistance is expressive from the earlier stage of the growth till the plant completes its life cycle. That is a very needed attribute present in the variety having the major gene of the resistance. Uh, Second important thing is that this resistance has no correlation with the environment. Whether the temperature increase or decrease, the genes responsible for the resistance express themselves. So, environment has no effect on the expression of this gene, and if the seedling resistant gene is present, it always express irrespective whether the environment is suitable or not suitable, and that is actually one of the major advantage of seedling resistance over the adult plant resistance. But the problem with the seedling resistance is that because it is based on a one major gene, and there is always chance that within the pathogen population there must be any mutant is present which has a gene of virulence which can break this major gene. And once that virulent mutant is present in a population, sooner than later the resistance is broken down. So that is why those varieties which are based upon major gene resistance will not stand for a longer period of time in the field, because the pathogen has the capability through mutation to break the major gene of resistance. That are the advantages or disadvantages which you can say associated with the seedling resistance approach. So plant pathologists for last couple of years adopted both approaches, mean that they incorporated the adult plant resistant gene in the variety along the seedling resistance. So seedling resistant gene provide the protection from day one till the crop complete its life cycle, while the adult plant resistance or express themselves when the plant most needed them, means that when there is the maximum grain filling is taking place. One of the success story is the Livingston variety. This is Australian variety. It has two gene, YR17 uh, and YR27. YR stand for yellow rust. It means that these two genes are a seedling resistant gene, and these express themselves at every stage of the growth, and they provide the protection against the yellow rust. However, along with these two genes, this Livingston variety also have an APR gene which is known as YR18. So it means this variety has two seedling resistant gene and one APR resistant gene. and that variety remained successful. Why? If you look at here, in 2006 there was a pathotype occur in the rust population, yellow or striped rust population, which is capable of breaking the YR17 gene. But still the variety survived because it has YR27 gene along with YR18 gene. So next 2 year pass, and in 2008 another pathotype came which has the capability of breaking the YR27 gene, but the variety survive because the variety has YR17 along with YR18 gene. And in 2010 there is a new pathotype arrive, and that pathotype break down the both seedling resistant gene YR17 along with the YR27. And what will happen? The plant varietal status change from resistant to moderately resistant to moderately susceptible, mean that the still the Livingston variety is showing some kind of resistance, and it is not become completely susceptible against the yellow rust. Why? Because it has the APR gene YR18. So YR18 or along with some other APR genes still providing the variety some kind of protection, so you are getting the yield. That would be a success story, that if the wheat variety has both the seedling resistance as well as the APR resistant gene, there is a chance that this variety can survive for a longer period of time. That is why the pathologists are trying to incorporate both the seedling resistance as well as the APR resistance in the varieties, so that a variety survive for a longer period of time. So always remember that there is a race is going between the pathogen and the scientist or the pathologist to produce the variety which is resistant. If the pathogen win the race, then obviously there is a disease. But as a plant pathologist or as a agriculturist, we always want to be remain one step ahead of the pathogen. And how we can remain ahead of pathogen, so that we adopt the strategies which are effective and which provide the maximum protection. And this is only possible that if we incorporate two different kind of resistant approaches in our crops. So this is a very brief introduction or a brief presentation about the adult plant resistance and about the seedling resistance. Always remember that the adult plant resistance is because of more than one gene, while the seedling resistance is because of one gene. And adult plant resistance is somehow associated with the environment and with the age of plant, while the seedling resistance is not associated with the environment as well as with the age of the plant, and it is remain effective from the early part of the life to the till the crop complete its life cycle.